This is the story of Captain Tom Henderson and his crew, honest fishermen off the Florida Keys. They found a majestic Florida Panther floating 120 miles offshore. That discovery began a rescue and revealed a crime so ugly it was impossible to ignore. It was a blistering morning in late June, the kind of stillness that precedes a tropical storm, but the sky was clear and vast. Tom Henderson, a man hardened by 30 years of sun and sea, adjusted his baseball cap. His shrimping trawler, the Southern Cross, was idling 120 miles southwest of Key West, right on the edge of the Gulf Stream. Tom was out here searching for a missing GPS buoy, but his eyes, sharp and weathered, caught a movement far off the starboard bow, a dark, erratic shape bobbing strangely in the calm water. His first mate, Miguel Chavez, a young man from Miami with a quick mind and sharp vision, grabbed the ship's powerful binoculars. Miguel braced against the rail, focused the lens, and then his jaw simply went slack. The binoculars dropped an inch, dangling from the strap around his neck. "Tom," Miguel whispered, the casual, rhythmic noise of the boat suddenly loud in the silence. "That's not a dolphin. That's a cat, a big one." Tom took the glasses. The image snapped into terrifying clarity. A massive, dark-coated male cat. It was a Florida Panther, a creature of legend, an apex predator of the swamps, an animal classified as critically endangered. And it was here, 120 miles from the nearest swamp, convulsing in the merciless, salty brine of the open ocean. Its head was barely visible above the waves. The cat, whom they would later name Everglades, was nearly gone. Its powerful body, made for the quick, low stalk of the marshland, was saturated and heavy. It wasn't swimming, it was fighting a lost cause. Every shallow breath a desperate plea against the sea. Tom, a man known for his reserve, felt a sudden, crushing, almost unbearable empathy. He knew with a certainty that sank his heart that they couldn't just sail away. This was a king, defeated, and they were the only witness. Tom grabbed the radio. He was shaking slightly. He immediately contacted the U.S. Coast Guard station in Miami. The dispatcher, hearing the words "Panther in the Gulf, 120 miles out," first thought it was a joke, a bizarre case of heat stroke. But Tom's steady, gravelly voice, heavy with urgency, convinced her. Soon, the massive Coast Guard cutter USCGC Sentinel was diverted and speeding toward their coordinates. But could the Panther survive the weight? The currents here were unforgiving. And the question that hammered Tom's heart, a question that begged for an answer, far darker than a simple accident, was this. How did a Florida Panther get here in the first place? This rescue, sparked by a miraculous sighting, was just the prelude. The real story, the exposure of a hidden evil that stretched from the swamps of Florida to the ports of the world, was about to begin. Stay with us. The arrival of the USCGC Sentinel, a powerful gray hull slicing through the waves, brought a huge surge of hope. Commander Laura Stern, a respected veteran known for her decisive action, led the operation. With her was the team's most vital asset, Dr. Evelyn Eve Shaw, a brilliant wildlife veterinarian with the calm demeanor of a seasoned surgeon. Eve had handled alligators, bears, and venomous snakes, but never a panther drowning at sea. Eve quickly assessed the situation. Everglades was drifting in and out of consciousness. His large dark eyes held only primal terror and exhaustion. This had to be quick. They deployed a specialized inflatable rescue raft with a low profile, designed specifically for marine mammal rescues. Two Coast Guard swimmers, Alex and Maria, encased in thick, high-visibility protective gear, began paddling cautiously toward the bobbing Panther. As they neared, the exhausted animal snapped awake. The sheer terror of the massive cutter, the foreign scent of the humans, and the roar of the ocean combined into a final, panicked adrenaline surge. This is the moment the rescue nearly became a tragedy. Everglades, perceiving the approaching raft and figures as a final, inescapable threat, lashed out. The powerful paws, tipped with razor-sharp claws, meant to dispatch deer and hogs, tore through the thick synthetic material of Alex's protective suit. The force was stunning, ripping the fabric on his forearm. Alex cried out, a mix of pain and pure shock, instinctively jerking back and flipping the raft slightly. The Panther, seizing the chance to escape this new terror, tried to twist away from the raft's edge, slipping entirely under the water. Panic rippled across the Coast Guard deck. "Hold the line! Alex, get back and secure the raft!" Eve's voice, though sharp, was steady. She knew fear was their greatest enemy now. She ordered Maria to maintain a gentle, steady presence. Then, in a move that shocked Commander Stern, Eve broke protocol. She jumped into a small motorized Zodiac dinghy and approached the raft herself. She was unarmed, carrying only a long pole with a carefully rigged rescue loop. She moved with an astonishing, almost spiritual grace. She didn't look at the cat as a threat. She looked at him as a patient. "Hey, big guy," she murmured, her voice soft, low, and even, a soothing contrast to the angry roar of the ocean. "We're friends. We're getting you home." As the Panther's massive, wet head broke the surface again, his eyes wide and dark with pure desperation, locked onto Eve. She didn't look away. With precision born of years studying wildlife behavior, she slipped the loop gently over his neck. It was just enough to provide immediate flotation and gentle control, not pain. Working with Maria, they carefully and painstakingly maneuvered the powerful, sagging body onto the rescue raft's platform. The danger was past, but the task of the lift remained. Using a specialized padded sling designed for large mammals, the team slowly hoisted the Panther onto the cutter's deck. As the massive body swung precariously in the humid air, Everglades looked less like the legendary predator of the swamps and more like a heartbreakingly helpless creature. They got him to the deck, but getting him there was not the same as saving him. This animal was hanging on by a thread, his life force dangerously low. In fact, what happened next was the hardest part of all. Don't go anywhere, because the real fight, the fight for his life, is about to begin. It's a battle against the clock, against science, and against the silence of a dying heart. The deck of the Sentinel quickly transformed into a high-stakes emergency veterinary unit. Dr. Eve Shaw began immediate triage. Everglades was suffering from severe hypothermia, a critically low 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and catastrophic dehydration. His breathing was dangerously shallow, his heartbeat erratic and weak. Commander Stern, a woman of deep respect and compassion, ensured the crew created a zone of absolute silence and efficiency. The USCG crew worked with the precision of a well-oiled machine, holding heat packs, preparing the IV drips, and monitoring the vital signs. Captain Tom Henderson and his crew, still bobbing nearby in the Southern Cross, refused to leave, watching the entire desperate operation unfold. They felt a direct, agonizing link to the fate of the animal they had discovered. The journey back to Key West was an endless, tense vigil against the relentless clock. Eve was pumping warmed fluids and essential electrolytes into Everglades, checking his pupils and gums every few minutes. "He's fighting," she muttered to Commander Stern, her voice thick with fatigue but driven by focus. "He has an incredible will to live, but his core temperature is still dangerously low. We have to keep him stable." But the sea and the damage it had inflicted always demands its price. 1 hour from the port, a sudden, alarming sound sliced through the quiet tension of the ship's cramped medical bay. The steady, rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor that had been their lifeline dissolved into a long, terrifying, unbroken flatline. Beep! The sound was the raw absence of life. It was the sound of defeat. Everglades' chest stopped moving. His eyes, which had been flickering with a sliver of consciousness, instantly glazed over. Time stopped for every person on that deck. This was the moment where courage and science met a dead end. "He's crashing! Clear the line! Get the defibrillator!" Eve yelled. But she knew the shocking paddles wouldn't work on the powerful, dense muscle and sodden coat. This was a final, desperate gamble, a choice to defy the inevitable. She moved with an inhuman burst of speed. Ignoring the powerful claws, the exhaustion, and the fear, Eve threw herself across the large cat's chest. She began emergency chest compressions, CPR, on a Panther. A young medic, James, immediately backed her up, timing the oxygen mask to her compressions, calling out the non-existent vitals. The tension was suffocating. the kind of silence that screams. Every breath Eve took, every forceful, rhythmic push on the great cat's ribs, was a silent, desperate prayer. Seconds stretched into an eternity. 1 minute passed, then 2. James was calling the vitals again. "No pulse, still flatline, Doc. We're losing him." Eve didn't stop. She pushed harder, her arms burning with exhaustion, her face etched with grim, unflinching determination. She was fighting not just for a patient, but for the symbol of hope that this cat had become. And then, faintly at first, the beep broke. It stuttered. "Beep, beep, 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 beep." "We have a rhythm," James shouted, his voice thick with raw emotion and relief. "A weak one, but we have a rhythm. It's picking up." Eve collapsed back onto the deck, gasping for breath, her head resting on the still, massive shoulder of the Panther. Everglades was back from the absolute brink. The medical bay erupted in a collective, silent release of air. They had literally forced a miracle. They had won the first battle, defying death itself. This close call confirmed two things. This animal had an unprecedented will to survive, and he had not chosen this fate. He had been placed here by something evil. Back on shore, a different kind of investigation had already begun, and what the agents found, involving a crime hidden in plain sight, would reveal a truth far more painful than the suffering of one cat. The puzzle pieces, including an important second Panther, are about to snap into place. Keep watching. Everglades was stabilized and airlifted to a specialized care center in Gainesville. The mystery of his presence, however, was now the exclusive focus of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the FBI. Here, the story reveals a difficult, uncomfortable truth about the prejudices that still haunt American society. Because Tom Henderson's boat, the Southern Cross, was an older, humble vessel, and because Miguel and Maria, his crew, fit certain outdated stereotypes often associated with smugglers along the Keys, the initial investigative team treated them with a crushing level of suspicion. They were detained, their vessel was searched extensively, not once but twice, and they were kept waiting for hours while authorities questioned their impossible story. Tom, an old-school man who deeply respected law enforcement, felt a sharp, burning sense of injustice. He had risked his life and his livelihood to save a life, yet he and his honest crew were treated like criminals. "We didn't see color when that cat was drowning," Tom later shared with Commander Stern, his eyes full of pain and frustration. "We just saw life. Why are they looking at us like we're the bad guys? We are the ones who saved him." Commander Stern, who had seen the integrity of Tom and his crew firsthand, used her considerable influence to redirect the investigation. She trusted her own lead, a suspicious, unregistered freighter named the Serpent, which her instruments had flagged for veering sharply off course near the rescue coordinates. The joint USCG raid on the Serpent was a swift, efficient, and textbook operation. The Coast Guard cutter surrounded the vessel, and heavily armed FBI agents used fast ropes and grappling hooks to board the ship under the cover of a dense, humid morning fog. What they found below deck was a horror show that justified every risk they had taken for Everglades. Down in the massive cargo hold, stacked floor to ceiling, was a floating prison. Hundreds of animals, and not just exotic species from overseas, but critically endangered American wildlife, were confined in incredibly unsanitary, cramped cages. They found bobcats, dozens of rare migratory birds, several young American black bears, and critically, a terrified female Florida panther. The twist? The mother panther. Eve, who had joined the raid team for the animal recovery, rushed to the female. She scanned the cat's shoulder for a subcutaneous microchip. The scanner beeped. This was Swamp Queen, a famous female from the Everglades National Park, known to have given birth recently. She was Everglades' mate. The cruelty was beyond imagination. Animals were crammed into their own waste. Water bowls were dry. The air was thick with the stench of sickness, fear, and neglect. This wasn't just smuggling. This was an assembly line of death, a business fueled by absolute greed and contempt for life. The emotional weight of the scene was overwhelming. Tom's initial frustration at the investigation melted into a righteous fury. His brief moment of injustice was nothing compared to the systematic suffering inflicted upon these hundreds of creatures. The Panther, Everglades, had done more than survive. He had led them to a hidden empire of crime. But the final, darkest truth remained. Why was Everglades 120 miles out? And why did the crime boss let him go when he could have been recaged? The answer came from the lowest level of the crime organization, and it was a revelation that hit much closer to home than anyone imagined. The ultimate peak of this journey, a victory for justice, is still ahead. You cannot miss this final chapter. The crew of the Serpent was quickly apprehended and brought to shore. Their leader, Captain Hector Ruiz, a career criminal who had moved from smuggling drugs to high-value animals, initially attempted to deny everything. But the evidence, the hundreds of suffering animals, the discovery of his entire illicit operation was damning. Under intense interrogation by the FBI, Ruiz finally broke. He revealed the full, shocking story of Everglades. Ruiz confessed that Everglades, Swamp Queen, and their 3 small cubs were all captured deep in the Florida Everglades National Park, snatched from their den and destined for a wealthy exotic animal collector overseas. They were the most prized, most high-value cargo. Everglades was the problem. During a rough patch of weather, the massive male panther broke free of his inadequate cage on the main deck. He was injured and terrified, but still a deadly predator. "We couldn't risk the million-dollar cargo inside the holds," Ruiz admitted, his voice cold and flat on the recorded confession. "We just wanted him gone. He was a risk. We tied him to a piece of plastic debris, a board, I think, and pushed him over the side. No shots, no blood, just a quiet burial at sea." But then, the final crucial twist, the one that elevated the crime from simple commerce to a profound act of malice, was exposed by a captured lieutenant. The lieutenant confirmed that Ruiz didn't just push him over because he was a risk to the cargo. Ruiz harbored a deep-seated, irrational hatred for the local panther population, a hatred rooted in a childhood tragedy where a panther had attacked his family's small livestock farm years ago, a loss that was never reconciled. He didn't just push Everglades overboard, he pushed him overboard out of a lifetime of ingrained bitterness and prejudice against the wild forces he felt had wronged him and his community. This was the true agonizing core of the story. Prejudice and hatred, whether against a person or against an entire species of wildlife, can lead to unspeakable cruelty. Justice was swift and absolute. Ruiz was convicted on multiple counts of conspiracy and endangered species trafficking. The Serpent was seized. All the rescued animals, hundreds of them, were immediately transferred to specialized U.S. wildlife sanctuaries and rehabilitation centers across Florida and beyond. Everglades and Swamp Queen spent 6 months under Dr. Eve Shaw's meticulous, loving care. They recovered their strength. In a final, powerful moment of closure, Swamp Queen's 3 small cubs were located in a secure facility and brought to the center, creating a precious family reunion that brought the entire care team to tears. The day of Everglades' release was deeply moving, a profound moment of collective redemption. Captain Tom, Commander Stern, Dr. Eve, and the entire rescue crew, including the once skeptical FBI agents, were there. The Panther, now sleek, powerful, and magnificent, walked cautiously to the edge of his temporary enclosure. He paused. He looked back at the small crowd of people who had risked their careers and their lives for him. Then, with a silent, powerful, and majestic leap, he vanished into the familiar, life-giving green of the Florida wilderness. He was home. The emotional release was complete. The final update brought the final, warm wash of emotion. Everglades, tracked by his GPS collar, and Swamp Queen were thriving. They were raising their cubs in the deep woods. And Tom Henderson, the simple fisherman who saved a king, was honored by the U.S. for his courage. He often said the encounter changed his life, reminding him that every life, whether human or animal, deserves respect and mercy, and that sometimes the greatest heroes are the quiet ones. It took the unbelievable survival of one incredible animal to expose a massive injustice and heal old wounds. And in the end, love, courage, and the fight for justice won. If this incredible true story of life, death, and redemption touched your heart, please let us know your thoughts on Captain Tom's integrity and Dr. Eve's courage in the comments below. And for more extraordinary stories of American heroes fighting for justice and wildlife, click on the video link here.